So, time has passed and things have happened. So, we're back at it again. It's these two head to head for round 2 of the previously watched TRX-4 Sport versus Element Ecto, or as we know them around these parts, it's Daphne versus Lil Yella. And as both these rigs have undergone some changes since their last go-round, let's take a quick look at the two of them, starting with Daphne the Sport, still running that venerable Hobbywing 1080, paired with a Holmes Hobbies Torque Master Expert 21 turn. And up front, taking care of steering duties, is again Holmes Hobbies, an SHV 500 V3, somehow, and for whatever reason, mounted in a overly complicated laydown position. And making sure all that stuff gets to the ground, Pitbull Growler ATs. On to Lil Yella the Ecto, who has undergone quite a lot of changes, is now servo on axle, and perhaps most notably runs a 3-gear dig transmission with a belt drive, and is running a Hobbywing Fusion 1200 kV brushless setup. And getting all of Ecto's power to the ground is a set of J-Concept hunks on some Injora Steelies. Then on to a little bit of tech stuff. Lil Yella has quite a lot of its weight moved down low. Servo and axle moves some down. It's got brass lower links and some very skinny aluminum uppers. The gearbox sits lower. The motor sits lower. Pretty much everything sits lower. So Lil Yella, of all the rigs here, has the lowest center of gravity. And if it was running a shorter tire, the hunks are a little bit tall, it would have a really low center of gravity. As it stands now, its CGH is about an inch from the top of the tire, somewhere down around the top of the rim itself. So that's very low. Now if we look at that compared to Daphne the Sport, Daphne is showing some good numbers, particularly for a TRX-4, being a portal vehicle. I mean, all things considered, any CGH under 4 inches is good for a TRX-4. Because if we look at a direct comparison of the two, Lil Yella at 3.16 inches from the ground and Daphne at 3.74, that's a difference of 0.48 inches or 12.2 millimeters. So you may or may not have asked yourself in the past, how far is it from the line through the axle to the line through the drive shaft? This amount of space on a TRX-4. And the answer to that question is 12 millimeters. So, ignoring all other factors, the differential in CGH between these two rigs is that one has portals and one doesn't. So now that we've gotten the ados out of the way, we'll just get straight into it. So this is going to be essentially the same layout as was done the first time around back in September. But this time I'm scoring it like a judge. So it's a 1-point penalty for a reverse, a 5-point penalty for fouling a gate, and the scoring is as simple as could possibly be. It's 1 point per second. You add the penalties to it, and that's the total. There's no bonuses for going through gates, none of that. We're keeping it quick and simple because this is just a straight up head-to-head, but with actual scoring on it. So Daphne the Sport finishes that one 52 seconds, 6 points on penalties for a total of 58. Straight into Lil Yella's run at it, and if it wasn't for background noise and the sound of the servo, sometimes you wouldn't hear Lil Yella at all. Much of Lil Yella's improvement comes from the addition of dig. You can hear the engagement of it at some points. Right there, a little bit. Yeah, see, that would have had to have been a reverse, but it managed to swing around and not hit that gate. So Lil Yella has an advantage there, fell into the same hole that Daphne did. Dig is just an advantage, like hands down. Unless the section has so much grip that the front end can't pull the rear end around, Dig is an advantage. It's right here, and especially with descending. The ability to stop the rear wheels is pretty great. So Little Yellow wraps that one up. 57 seconds, 2 points on penalties for a 59, which gives that first one to Daphne by a single point. As mentioned before, no faffing about. We're going straight into it. I should probably point out that the start finishes, the vehicle has to pass directly over the red marker. So this one is a top gate and a bottom gate. Don't cross the line in the middle. So it's basically just a circle. This is not an advantage for Daphne because it requires a much tighter turning radius. So to complete this and get to the last gate, she's going to have to throw a reverse. 27 plus 1 for a total of 28. Lil Yellow whispers onto the horse. The loudest part about him is that I apparently refuse to cut the fender wells any bigger, and those hunks like to chatter them. So this is a type of surface that the hunks do not particularly excel at. There isn't a lot, like all the lugs are the same height, and they're not super soft, but it has dig, so Lil Yellow crosses it 25 plus 0 for a 25. Easily taking that round and tying it up at 1 point apiece. We head straight over to Sleeping Giant. This is a two-parter. It will be a circle, a horseshoe from right to left, followed immediately by a horseshoe from left to right, and the 2 times will be combined for their cumulative score, and we'll see who comes away the victor. There's Lil Yella's first run from right to left, and now for the run from left to right, which neither of these really proved to be difficult for Yella at all. I think it used dig just once there, and then hooks the tire to pull around the other way. Crosses over with 38 seconds, and once again, no penalties for a final score of 38. The nice tractor-like whine of a TRX-4 gearbox. That little bit of extra CG, you can feel it a little bit on terrain like this when you're trying to turn sharply on uneven terrain. But Daphne with about 1 3/4 pounds over Lil Yella and tires that are definitely significantly more broken in, doesn't really have much of a problem, and has enough steering angle to finish it in a 37 with no penalties, nipping Lil Yella by 1 point, which puts Daphne up 2 points to 1 in the overall. Straight over to Oblivion. This is 3 gates, and then if you include the start-finish marker, it kind of forms a sort of a diamond. The upper gate has to be passed in a side hill configuration. I should mention there is a 10-point penalty for a rollover, but Daphne there showing one of the true strengths of the TRX-4 platform, which is, as far as I'm concerned, an inexplicable ability to almost always land on its wheels, which brings Daphne across the line at a 40 plus 6, 6 reverses in there. Lil Yella generally takes a bit of a different approach. Having dig means you need to use reverse a lot less. But Daphne has the ability to assault obstacles faster, because at higher speeds, the Ecto tends to get unsettled more quickly. That could be the height of the tire. That could be the narrower track combined with that longer wheelbase. Anyway, Little Yellow coming around here to cross the start-finish with a 43+1 for a final of 44, which hands that round to Little Yellow and ties it up at 2 points apiece. We move over to the big, angry, mixed media side hill that is the southern face of Leviathan. I have not come up with a suitable name for this side hill other than to state that it is very angry. This is a 3-gate. You have to pass 1 gate below, 1 gate above, and then wrap around this double section. There are 2 tennis ball halves there, but it just counts as it's just 1 gate. I don't have enough tennis ball halves to have one with an arrow that points both directions. So we did just a moment ago see our first gate foul. And I think, yeah, Little Yellow cleaned that one. So far I think has a reverse and 1 foul, which on this section is excellent. Another foul there, a very small one, but this competition is so tight, and I knew it would be tight, that we're going strict on all the scoring. Little Yellow finishes it with a 77 plus 10 for a total of 87. Straight into Daphne's attempt. The camera is moved because this is actually, I had to run it again because in the first run I kept wondering why the drag brake was not working correctly, and it never occurred to me to check to see what gear the transmission was in, and it was in 2nd gear. So it actually, Daphne put down a respectable time, but whenever I would let go of the throttle, it would roll backwards. It was like having no drag brake. So for a portaled vehicle without dig, there's our first application of reverse. She is clean so far, but this is a little steep here, and a rollover here is apocalyptic. So as I mentioned, that's just 1 gate, so that counts as a single foul. She runs very wide of the middle, and once she's past there, it's pretty much smooth sailing on the way back. So Daphne wraps that one up, 68 plus 6 for a 74. That's, I mean, it's not just penalties. Daphne was quicker on that. I would think that Little Yellow would be superior on the side hill, but I think that 100% comes down to tire. We put a couple more hours of use on those hunks, get them broken in the rest of the way, and I think that one could really go either way. Wider track width becomes an issue right there. Fouls that first gate. Cannot push it around tight enough, and before there's an opportunity to apply reverse, fouls a 2nd gate, then runs wide again and just taps a 3rd gate. So Little Yellow is going to have to roll over to not take this one. 46 plus 16 for a total of 62. So Daphne is not the queen of all side hills, just apparently the much rougher ones. This is the Ecto's bread and butter. In previous iterations, when it had its stock gearbox, that section right there where it started to lift that rear tire would not have been salvageable. It would have just rolled away. But with the setup now, with how the dig gearbox mounts the motor, and how the dig gearbox sits in the chassis, and how the servo and axle lowered that weight, and a custom battery tray, move the battery a little bit lower than stock. Everything is combined to move the CG down, 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 down. So that angle, like I say, there's a slip angle with go fast vehicles, and there's a tip angle that I apply to crawlers. Lil Yella's tip angle has gotten very wide. So Lil Yella does that one very strategically in a 59, but with no penalties, which edges Daphne by 3 points and evens up the competition at 3 apiece. That's where we kind of shift gears, because much like when I did the portal battle and the round of horse, things like this could literally go on all day. So what we've arrived at now with the Ecto and Daphne, the sport, are 2 vehicles of very similar capability that are better at some things than others, relatively speaking. When the first contest of this occurred, this is a section that Daphne flew through and continues to do so. This is kind of her obstacle. And this was a section that, try as they may and try as they might, Lil Yella could not get over this. But now, Lil Yella goes through it as easily, if not more easily. When it comes to descending, the TRX-4 is an excellent descender. It does not have dig. Lil Yella used dig to come down that, and the TRX-4 doesn't have access to that, but they both descend with about the same efficiency. Now see, this is an application where the TRX-4 excels. Pulling itself up over those slick rocks right there is difficult. And Daphne makes it look easy. And then Daphne does what Daphne does, which is roll down and land straight on her wheels. And when she doesn't, she can do that Traxxas twist maneuver where you steer towards the ground, give it a bump, and it lands right on its wheels. And that's not unique to Daphne the Sport. Defenders can do it. My big old brass loaded Jolly Green can do it. No matter the width, the tire, the rim, whatever, TRX-4s can flip themselves over for some reason. Now see, this is a little bit the hunks not excelling at what I just always call slick rock. But it's also a little bit no portal, because at some points the front or rear pumpkin is getting hung up and you just can't see it. And then the other part is that 12.8 inch wheelbase, that extra half inch. In some instances, that length contributes to stability, but in others, it doesn't help. Like breaching right here, trying to get up that. If that wheelbase was a half inch shorter, I think it would drive straight up. We'll find out soon enough. When I finish the banana is essentially the same layout as an Ecto, but with a 12.3 inch wheelbase. So we'll see. That was one of the rare instances that Lil Yella landed wheels down. And I do still, to this day, have a hard time shifting my brain back and forth between portals and straight axles, because they don't take the same line. They really can't. Lil Yella on its own line is I mean, it's faster. But I think in general, Daphne can be faster, because Daphne can handle more messed up terrain. Daphne's weakness, I think, is showcased a little better coming up here in pure vertical. Like in terms of pure vertical, straight axle is going to win. Like Lil Yella goes up this with no issue at all. That is nearly vertical. here we get the sounds of the tractor trying to go up it. And when she gets right there, it just pushes the front end over. And once you're that wide, it's going to fall off. So Daphne will continue to try it and try to pull the same line that Lil Yella did. And it's not a thing that I don't want to overgeneralize, but it's kind of a thing a TRX-4 doesn't want to do. Daphne's got 60-40 weight distribution and still can't keep the nose down on this. And those upside down desert lizards, which are like pure droop, that was a fair passing of it. But like, see, the strength of the TRX-4 exhibited here just lands on its wheels and drives out of it. It's also very predictable as to when it's going to tip, whereas the Ecto almost always lands upside down, and if you try to Traxxas twist out of it, it just gets worse. I don't know if that's the shape of the body. The Ecto body doesn't seem to be shaped that differently from a creep, and it's much shorter. When they're parked next to each other, you can see how much shorter an Ecto is than the way Daphne is. And that body, I tell you this, that creep body is mounted as low as humanly possible on a TRX-4. The shock towers are cut up through the bed in the back. It can't go, the front is sitting on the shock towers in the front. It can't go any lower. So there they are, and they are definitely more equals than the last time this happened. What they both continue to have are strengths and weaknesses. I think in terms of versatility, it's honestly a toss-up, because the Ecto is reasonably quick and has some good bumpability with a 1200 kV motor in it. And the TRX-4 is the all-time aftermarket support king, so you can make it into whatever you want it to be. Daphne has only had shocks changed since the last installment. I'm pretty sure everything else has remained exactly the same, because in fairly short order I got her exactly the way I wanted her to handle, which is, I think, a testament to the versatility of the TRX-4 as a platform. The Ecto took, I think, a good bit more work to get it to be where I wanted it. But I think, as it sits now, any changes going into the future will be cosmetic. I'd love to get a clear Ecto body and paint one the way I want, but performance-wise, I'm thrilled with how Lil Yella drives. It has one of the cheaper servos of the vehicles in the fleet, that AGR FRC AG73, whatever it is. I love that servo, because if I can get the wheels turned for less money, that's great. That's the same servo that's in a handful of other rigs here, and I will keep buying them. So I think both of these rigs are in a good place. The matter of Lil Yella getting even better, and as I had mentioned in another video, I think it could have won Crawler Cross Raid had it been outfitted in its current condition from the beginning. But at the beginning of that competition, Lil Yella was a bone stock Ecto, and it didn't really, I guess it didn't suit either my style of driving or my driving ability. but where I've gotten it to now really does. I really enjoy driving that one as much as I enjoy driving Daphne, who handles very differently. I mean, very differently. As I say, the tip angle on Liliella has gotten bigger, but the tip angle on Daphne the Sport is massive. When that rig goes to roll over, you can feel it well ahead of time. Like, there's nothing sneaky about it. And I could go on talking about these two all day, but this has already run far longer than I was hoping, so I'm going to do what I can now to wrap this one up. So if you've made it this far, thanks for making it this far. If you haven't, be sure to drop a like. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. Check out Crawler Canyon on Instagram, where I post the little updates. And I hope to see you in the next one.